I am welcoming Brian Tseng. Shang. Full disclosure, just happened recently in Florida. Kind of a rival to James Rink. Organized it, and we're going to be talking about sound frequency and its impact and what happened at Montauk. Preston Nichols, the pop industry, frequency overtones, using frequency to change things. Should be pretty exciting. Here he comes. Ta-da! I'm just going to keep talking so you can see if you can hear me. Maybe I should sing a little song.
Recording in progress. Here we go.
Yeah,
Now I can
yeah.
hear you
Yeah.
loud and clear.
You have
Holy
such
cow.
an array behind you, Brian. I
And
almost feel like we should start on that before you even say hello or I say who you are.
yeah, well, a lot of people they usually before I added the AR-15 gun, people always noted the katana
Yeah,
underneath
that's
it.
what I really saw first, actually.
Oh yeah, excellent, excellent. And then on this side of me, I've got all sorts of just like survival and camping gear, and then so a little bit of weaponry, but more on the equipment side. That's a little bit more on some equipment and then some weaponry, and then surrounded by my books and my crystal garden. Here, I'll show you the
Crystal
room.
Garden, let's have a look.
I got a whole crystal garden over there.
Oh yes, hello. Oh, I like that big geode. That's great big amethyst, isn't it? You got
Yeah, that's a
holding up the
whole
whole frame.
yeah, it's a
It's
whole
amazing,
thing.
isn't it, what your environment says about you? That's why I've always got flowers.
Yeah,
Flowers and
flowers is great.
me, we just get on well.
Well, I have a rose garden right out front here,
Oh,
so I'm covered.
nice. Hopefully in petals wafting in the window. Now, how shall we introduce you? Because there is more to you than just having organized the disclosure conference. And I'd
Yeah,
like to just bring that in so that people can understand a little bit where we're going to go with this.
sure, sure. Well, I consider myself to be a starseed and a light worker, and I'd say 99% of the people in our community would qualify as the same. So, and I'm born to a Chinese American immigrant family here in the United States, and I grew up on the East Coast, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. You
What
know,
did you do with your accent?
it's right. That's right. It's a Jersey accent. And I got to live a rags to riches life because my father, Jack Tseng, if you look him up on Wikipedia, he pioneered a lot of computer graphics technology in the 80s and 90s, especially on the IBM computing side of things.
Mhm.
And he pioneered overclocking on the graphical processor units before they introduced it on the motherboard computing side, where they have overclocking to make the motherboard run faster so you can make video games run faster. My
Oh,
dad pioneered a bunch of that stuff. Needless to say, it afforded me the opportunity as kind of a rags to riches Chinese American immigrant family to now go to college and get my biochemistry degree and go out to California from the East Coast and then decide I didn't like biochemistry, the field of pharmacy at all, or bioinformatics, but I learned a thing or two about how the field works. And then I went into organizing physicians, medical doctors, full time for 5 years, doing just grassroots, but real organizing, not like activism. We pick up a picket sign, but real organizing, tactics and strategy, discipline, methodology. And for 5 years, working with doctors to fight for people's medical care and the ethical practice of medicine and to deal with the government policies and the huge corporations they were in bed with together to say grant tax breaks to giant hospital corporations that instead of giving charity care, they drive up the cost of care and push the poor people onto the street. Okay. And then the local government, after giving away all the tax breaks to the corporation, and having all the poor people dumped onto their county hospital, they say, "Oh, we don't have enough money to take care of anybody. It's an economic crisis," and it's a downward spiral from there. Needless to say, I did that for 5 years full time, 3 years part time, and with those skills, I went into selling solar and electric cars for a while. But then I found my real love, which is the disclosure movement. Um, when the scamdemic kicked in, a lot of the hospitals that I helped to save turned into what I call death factories. and it really disheartened me.
Mm.
And so, I got out of that organizing field, and it seems that me and a lot of other people, disclosure now is where it's at.
Well,
And
so
so we talk about,
together, isn't it? Like I'm just thinking, Dr. Brian Ardis, Dr. Brian Ardis, Dr. Brian, have you made friends with him? Healing for the Ages, because I love that movement that he's pioneered. And of course, he was disclosure of what was going on with this pandemic. Right on.
which doctor?
So Dr. Brian Ardis, who's in
Oh,
tech.
Brian Artis. Yes, yes, I like Brian Artis.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like him exactly because he's one of the physicians who's a bit much further along, breaking out of the 3D matrix, starting to see the 4D, the nefariousness behind the scenes. He's starting to get into the spirituality. He's starting to get attacked by all the appropriate lamestream authorities. So I do like Dr. Artis.
Yeah, I like the way he went about it with his group of people and bringing an entire package. So that's essentially what you're doing, I suppose, with the disclosure movement. Was that the pull to kind of let's bring in information, let's organize it, let's give it more bulk, more emphasis, and therefore it's easier for people to trust and understand and switch from that place of doubt to, oh yeah, this resonates with me. I might even remember something. Was
Yeah.
that your ethos there?
Well, exactly. That's a big part of it with the 2024 Full Disclosure Conference we just held in Florida earlier this July in St. Pete Beach. It's kind of like this. In the ufology, ET community, what do you call it? Contactee communities, you kind of have what I call the old fogey contingents, where I'll pick on MUFON, for example. A lot of great people are in mutual UFO, network, right? But to a large extent, it's been infiltrated, or to the extent that it hasn't been infiltrated, there is this pervasive um, thought or ideology at MUFON where it's like they have to have the most scientific proof of UFOs ever, using the most advanced, expensive, state-of-the-art infrared thermographic imaging technology cameras. Okay. And I kind of joke that contingent, they wouldn't believe or agree in that UFOs and ETs really exist 100% if a UFO landed on their head, you
I'm
know.
just reading a book, okay, which is part of Peter Moon's Sky Publishing
Ah,
series.
we'll
We
get into that.
mentioned that on our last mini chat, but this book is so cool because it takes what happened in World War II with the Japanese and the Americans and it completely turns it on its head. The
Oh yeah.
dirigibles that the Japanese were sending to the US, which ended up in Area 51, had these biological weapons that could have killed everybody everywhere, in fact, but they decided not to detonate. It was, hey, don't mess with us. But that turned into the Roswell saga. That's what people made. The American government at the time turned that into the UFO hoax because it was so easy to piggyback the gullibility of people and this doubt factor. And so you've got layers and layers and layers of all kinds of indoctrination. And you've
Well,
decided
actually,
to set up a
I got to,
conference and bring
I got to
clarity.
jump. Well, I have to jump in right there. I'm definitely going to help bring clarity. But this might mix you up a little bit first from what you just said. The 1947 Roswell incident was 100% real. That was a real incident. In fact, that incident is where we got some of our technology that we use to this very
Oh,
day.
this is what I believed up until reading this book. I tell you, Brian, too.
Oh no, no, no.
You're gonna
I,
have to read the book. You're
oh
gonna
yeah,
have to
I
read
know, but
the
I've got
book.
I've got more than I've got real life survivors and witnesses and people who are involved in these programs, and and then the people who come out since then. But well, let me back up a little bit. So the old fogey contingent, a UFO lands on their head, and they'll say to you the next day, Isabel, that was some really good LSD you put in my drink yesterday, and then you must have gotten us in a car crash because I feel wrecked. But there was no way in heck UFOs are real. And they're all bandaged up from like where they got hit in the crash.
I
So
came from
that
a
that's
family where an uncle, half uncle, if you could have half uncles, I had a half uncle, and the explanation for him was, oh yes, he committed suicide because he had a UFO incident, and that was it. No other conversation about the man's life, and that's why one of his sons was strange. I love this boy; he was a beautiful guy, But there was no conversation. You know, I was a teenager at the time when I found this information, and there was no questioning. You didn't talk about it. It was under the carpet. Shoo, quiet. Ooh, nothing to see here.
What you're speaking to there is that stigmatization. You become a pariah, and then like sounds like it even carried over to the son, you know, and that's really a tragedy there. So that giggle factor has been very much introduced, the whole conspiracy theorist term coined by the CIA in the wake of the JFK assassination. The giggle factor is a big part of what we have to overcome. That was a big impetus for this conference, is for us to assemble the most cogent, coherent, reliable whistleblowers and testifiers, and have it presented in such a way where all of their testimonies are mutually supportive. Anyone who attended the event or watched the live stream, but especially who attended in person, you could speak with any of the presenters together or separately. Just go hard at them, you know, really grill them, and you're going to find that it's, for the most part, everything is, for the most part, what I would say consistent. I would say that there are a lot of people in our community where they have different points of view, and they come to, you know, different conclusions. But for the most part, the data there for me and many others is very consistent. You
So
know,
this is
and
the
I can
point
get
that I wanted to kind of drill down on with you, because I can see that your mind is quite similar in what I love to do, which is with all my research over the years, you know, I've looked at many disparate things, really different things, way out of field for most people, and then seen the connections. And that's mostly what these sort of starseedy type minds have. We have this weird overview ability. And so building bridges to the populace who have been hypnotized and indoctrinated. So for me, at the moment, one of the key things is this idea of frequency. And you know, I've been working with kids, with children for a long time, and they come to me with, "Oh, Taylor Swift, can we study her song?" And it's like, no. And there's a lot wrong with her, and I can't really tell you, but let's go and look at this song instead. So I would have to shut them down because I'm not going to support that. However, how do you build the bridge? How do you tell a child? You can't. You can use a piece of information carefully crafted to their ability to perceive, but building bridges of what is going on frequency wise in the world through the media, through the indoctrination. And that's why we're going to get into your other piece of information with the whole Montauk industry, that underground base system that spread out throughout the world and influenced it so hugely in terms of frequency output, you know, through music, through movies, through radio wave frequency, all the EMF distribution around the world. So the more of us who start to talk with some kind of coherence and bring it to practical applicability, you know, I use overtones to change the weather or to change my frequency when I know they're pumping full of toxins into the air. In the same way, I'll teach that to a child too. So it's great so they can use their voice, but it's so they can be conscious and aware. So we're the bridge builders. So if you could build your second conference, the next, which I'm sure you're going to be.
We are. Oh, we're yeah. 2025 is announced. We're expecting triple to quadruple the attendance for this first year, because it was only our first year. It was a huge success, but we only had 7 months to get it off the ground. It was a very crowded field. Everyone who went, they were raving. You know, and if let me share my screen, what I'll do. Let's see. I'm just going to tell the viewers here.
Oh, you got some great faces there.
So we got Miles Johnston and Carrie Cassidy. They've been reporting on secret space programs and super soldiers for decades now.
And it's interesting because I'm across in England, you're in the States, and Miles Johnston, of course, his basis project, he is based here. Your mic keeps on going off. And of course, very United States. So again, it's this nice bridging.
Exactly. So they're reporting on the people in the programs, such as Chris O'Connor, Daryl James, Jago Reed, Arkeem Ra, Laura Eisenhower. Then you've got people, Tony Rodriguez. Then you got people who've done remote viewing, blind scientific remote viewing, such as Yemi Janet of the Farsight Institute, Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress. Okay. And then you got people on the more esoteric side, like Johnny Enoch, who was a protege of Jordan Maxwell, exposing the Illuminati cabal types for his whole life. Um, Daniel Brinkley had like 4 near-death experiences, so he's more on the ascension side. We've got a bit of disclosure and ascension put together for our conference here, and we're expecting 2025 to be even bigger and better next year. So, um, you know, a big focus of our conference was survivors of the Montauk Project.
Mm.
So, Arkeem Ra is a very good friend of mine, and he and Alondra Markman and several others here, probably Mario Maharas may have been part of it. When I say may have been, a lot of people, you could be in these programs and projects and not even really know it or truly understand it because of the memory wiping techniques that are employed
You
against.
know Dr. Chanel Wolverton Seon. She's a dear friend.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've heard she's a friend of mine. I love her. And we've had a couple of chats on different shows. And we just touched briefly on the whole Montauk thing because yeah, she was there. She was involved. Um,
Okay.
and for some people, it's just let's just leave it over there. It's fine. I weirdly, as a child, I lived next to the Appleton Laboratories, which was the equivalent of the Montauk in little tiny Britain, which I only discovered lately that it was like, oh, underground base going on there. No wonder I had some really weird experiences. I wasn't in that program, but I definitely had some of the effects right on me as a child, which it's fascinating, isn't it? How people kind of congregate. Now, I want to ask you something quickly while we're on this little moment here. James Rink, was he part of that? Because I had him recently when he just created his alternative movement. And, I love him. I've followed him for a long time. I find him very difficult to communicate with because I find there's so much broken in his mind and heart still that it's just like the doubt. You can open up to a bit of joy, a bit of fun, and then it's like clap down, difficult because of the injury and the difficulties in those programs.
I can speak to this. I still consider myself to be a friend of James Rink, even though we had a huge public blowout, if you will, over this conference, and I can get into that. He dropped off the organizing team for the conference, and we have the last recording of the Zoom team meeting of this. Myself and Ida Farhat and others on her team decided to continue with the conference, which we did, and he claims that we stole his conference, his intellectual property, and he threw a counter conference,
Mm.
which actually kind of turned out to be a good thing. It brought in more presenters on his side. They presented great information, and then they attracted more people to our conference as well. So it worked out okay.
I like
Um, this, this is a deal with James. He's real in that he was at the Montauk Project. He's been part of these secret space programs as a quote unquote super soldier. Okay. Um, Having said that, since then, here in the 3D real world, here and now, okay, coming back from the 20 and back or the time travel programs, and I can get into 20 and backs and time travel and cloning and alters and
We'll do that on
conscious.
another session, okay? Because that's
Yeah.
yes.
So, but it doesn't mean that in the here and now, after having gone through everything that he had under the hands of people like Preston Nichols, who gave a whitewashed testimony to Peter Moon for his book series of the Montauk Chronicles. Okay, and James uh, today has a lot of unhealed trauma, and unfortunately, he puts a lot of great people on his show, Super Soldier Talk, and then there are a lot of people on his show who don't really belong there. People who maybe they do have real testimonies, but the things that they're advocating for today are like they advocate rape. One of these people openly. He this other his name is
Yeah,
Koso
that
Ouch.
is the tiny exception, as you know. But yeah, okay, I'm sure he's.
Koso Ouch is or Barrow
I want to
May
be
from
careful to
Cambodia.
color this, to yeah.
He's selling he's pushing a fake cryptocurrency where someone looked into it, where you get taxed 28% to buy in and 28% to buy out. And he's pushing this amazing cryptocurrency, and he wants you to link into this artificial computer, to link to the quantum computer, otherwise you will die. Like, that's his message. And so it's sad because James's real testimony is being hurt by some of the things the actions or the course he's pursuing today, but in no way should that take away from his very real testimony.
He's a real
And
sweetheart, and that's, I think, the problem that, when you get to the core of someone like that, you see the beauty. I'm used to working with children, so I see that beauty in the person much easier with a child than, the adult's got so many layers, but you can see that in him, and then you can see these kind of gateways of damage. And I mean, it's important that we see his testimony, we hear him, and we hold him, because the layers going on in our reality are just so extraordinary. You just mentioned Preston Nichols, who we're going to talk about because of his role at Montauk and in the frequency movement, the music movement. The book, which is more interesting than the Montauk one, was The Music of Time, where he was actually talking about how he had this ability to induce frequency into the final product, the final mix of most of the acts that we would know from the late 50s onwards, through the Montauk project system. But we need to understand this kind of level and layers of complexity and manipulation, because we're at a time we're trying to form, oh my God, what is real?
let me I can go in it. Let me give the breakdown, the run through, because a lot of people even listening to this are probably like, what the heck is this Montauk project
Yes.
that Isabel and Brian keep talking about here? So World War II, you had Maria Orsic, okay, and the Vril Society. She was a very beautiful German woman who was very psychic, and she was literally receiving telepathic communications from the constellation Aldebaran, from Nordic-looking ETs. Like, these are like Scandinavian tall-looking ETs, but they're different factions, good and bad.
And
This
I will
faction,
insert right now, the alternative is not that it's Aldebaran, but it was Inner Earth people. So there are
okay,
many, yeah, okay, but carry on.
right,
Yeah.
in the Vril, and it may be that the inner earth, that there may be inner earth connections that are in contact with Aldebaran, and they're all in contact with each other, and so there's a lot more of those layers as well. Okay, Maria, she was receiving telepathic communications for things like how to build UFO technology, and then that's where you got the Nazi UFOs. I forget what they're called. Um, the
Oh,
name.
Die Glocke, because it's the bell. Die Glocke.
Well, that was one of them, but there's another one. There's another name that's a different craft. That's a particular craft. That's Hitler's Die Glocke. That was this one. But then there's also these types that they had to figure out how to like stabilize them so they could put weaponry on it, so that when they fired, they didn't get pushed around by the kickback from their cannons. Okay, so off of that, that was where the Germans got the UFO technology. They went to Antarctica, built a base called New Schwabenland, and then that was where at the end of World War II, you had Operation High Jump, led by Admiral Byrd, taking a naval carrier group down there, and then they got torn to pieces by these UFOs. Barely anyone from that carrier group made it back.
And let's just say the size of that carrier group was absurdly huge. It was
It was
over
huge.
10,000 men, wasn't it? Which was, what are you doing just going down to Antarctica with that number of men? And
For a
they could
research
have generated.
expedition. They
Yeah,
said it was for research.
looking at the penguins, obviously.
Sure. Well, those are some very heavily armed penguins with laser beams. So off of
That's
that,
the meme I saw lately.
so off of that, the USA, they decided that they needed to get hip to this. And this is where they had been working with Nikola Tesla and other scientists, I think like John von Neumann and others, and to do the Philadelphia experiment.
And these were all
And
the
this,
project, just to insert, these were the Project Paperclip scientists which were imported into the USA after the supposed World War II ending. So they grabbed a
Sure.
whole lot of Nazi engineers and brought them over to USA because not everyone knows that either. So just put that in.
Oh yeah, exactly. And Tesla wasn't one of those Nazi scientists. He was from Romania, and he'd come over earlier way before all that.
A lot
But
of interesting people
def-
come from Romania.
oh yeah,
Fascinating place. Have you read the Radu Cinema books?
I have not yet. They're up on my shelf. I have so much I need to catch up on. I've got too much. I know,
Oh.
I know. I've read
Them
skimmed
by
through it,
your
and I know
bed.
a little bit.
Take a little piece each day.
Well, what I've been told is it might be they might have also there might be some misinformation or disinformation in those books to
Of
throw
course,
you
there
off of
has
the
to
real
be
truth.
sometimes. Yeah, because you have to be led away from certain things that otherwise, how on earth were those books published?
Exactly. So the USA with the Navy, they wanted to catch up with the Nazis with the UFOs and all this technology that we are getting left behind. And so they took two Tesla coil generators and put one on each end of the USS Eldridge, a destroyer class naval ship outside of a harbor in Philadelphia. And and Tesla, by the way, and this other scientist, they dropped out of the program because they said this is not ready to subject human test subjects to this. And the Navy went ahead without them. And so when they fired up those generators, what they did was they claimed that they wanted to achieve radar invisibility. Well, not only did they achieve radar invisibility, the ship, oh, one of my dogs is coming here, literally dropped off of it disappeared from sight. And this is depicted in many of these Philadelphia experiment movies that are out there, where they basically opened up a rip in time and space, and it was not good. This is not a healthy thing. It's not good for this physical reality.
So what we're seeing in those images are obviously just from the movie, but they were trying to show how
No,
some of the
this
human
is supposed to
bodies were incorporated into the bulkhead,
that
sadly,
actually
was
this
supposed
image is
to
supposed to be
die.
real. This is supposed to be one of the real images, Isabel. This one, there are fake images out there that they put for the movie. Like that might have been a recreation one, but this one right here, this is supposed to be real, I've been told.
It
Because
looks
what
from the shadows, there are different directions of shadows. So some of it
what it is
real and some of it not.
uh, what it is um these these people are sticking out of the bulkhead, and this is a curved wall here, and that's why the shadows look like it's coming at funny angles.
Hmm.
But there's more photos of this phenomenon, because what happened is when they warp through time, this is supposed to be real too. When they warp through time and space, the sailors were able to merge with the hull of the ship, and what happened is when
And you
they
can,
came out.
let's just talk on that because we're talking about frequency. So let's just bring the set the scene because of course metal is still it still has a vibrant frequency to it because it is part of the creation. However, a human body has a much different set of frequency and it's a living, breathing, pulsing, moving at a faster rate. So you can imagine why a shift into a different dimensional plane would create this misnomer and the body where it should be in space turns into being in a piece of metal. Horrible.
Right. And so when they cut the generators and they came out of this time space rip, if you were one of these sailors and you were still, you know, intertwined or or overlapping this physical space, that was the horrific effect. And a lot of these they mostly they died horrific deaths in this physical plane. Um, the US government, they said, wow, there's something to this technology. And they moved the experiments over to Brookhaven National Laboratories. Okay. Which, let me see if I'll open it up on Google Maps.
The hamlet town of, it sounds so peaceful and sweet, doesn't it? Innocuous.
Yes, well, part of it is you got Long Island, New York. Okay, most people when they hear New York, they think New York City, and Manhattan area and Wall Street and the Empire State Building. And they don't, and then they also think all of upstate New York. Okay. But you got all of Long Island here, 100 miles plus that just extends eastward that way. I mean, 100, I don't know how many 100 miles it is, but um, basically, Brookhaven National Labs. Okay, you'll even see kind of like the cyclotron type rings here, the proton accelerator ring. Here's like another one right here. Okay, and this is all depicted in the TV show Stranger Things.
Mm.
Okay, Stranger Things is really based on the Montauk Project. It was going to be named after the Montauk Project. And apparently, the producers, the Duffer Brothers, were told to change to not use that name. Um, the military code name of the project, I've been told, is the Phoenix Project, Project Phoenix.
So let's just
And
bring
then
in that information. Very often, dossiers of information would be handed over to the media production company, and they would be told, hello, you are to follow this information and incorporate it. Seeing as we're getting
sure.
into that area, I want to just put these little.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep. And that's part of Operation Mockingbird, with the CIA intelligence community getting to use the mainstream media as its basically propaganda apparatus.
Yeah.
So with Brookhaven National Labs, they were doing this Tesla experimentation. They also at this point brought something over known as the Montauk Trip Chair. And what I've been told is that from one of the Roswell crash sites. Uh,
Now, this is what you have to read the Etheric Crystal, which is the Radu Cinema book, where he describes how they created one of those chairs from the inner earth experience that they had access to in Romania. And the American government were highly jealous of that and were trying to copy it, but in a much more aggressive, forceful manner, whereas Radu was developing something much more etherically based on the very fine, subtle vibrations of the brain and using meditation as a control mechanism, much more sort of subtle, etheric, higher plane level. So
because they have two totally different goals in mind. Radu probably wants spiritual ascension, whereas the military want to figure out how to weaponize it. And so they took basically a piloting chair from one of the downed UFO, because the deal is that the ETs, they don't pilot their craft with a stick and rudder. They literally telepathically sync with the chair, I mean the craft, and their piloting chairs are what help them achieve this telepathic link.
I'm going to put an image in from the book. We can, so you can see it later on. That would be nice to bring in because you can't always get that image.
Sure. And these ETs, they're smaller grays, so they're like 4 feet tall. And so the chair was literally a child-sized chair. It didn't matter if you put an adult in it. It wasn't more like that they physically fit or didn't. It's just they discovered, unfortunately, that children were the only ones who had the psionic or psychic energy and ability to make the trip chair do what they wanted it to do. And in the TV show Stranger Things, okay, they depict this by showing 11 opening up a doorway to what's called the upside down. Okay, well, the
Let's
real
in
deal.
that other movie. What's the movie where the boy travels in his little spaceship and can you remember the? It's like really cute movie. I'll put a slide in because it's really good to put these references, and I'm also going to put a reference from the book I've just read, which is talking about the very small Japanese 4-footers who were used in these dirigible craft. So there's a whole meld of information we need to just put in here. Okay,
They don't have anything on the Montauk trip chair.
I'm
Well,
going to show you
okay,
too.
so what they were doing is they were taking kids, people like Preston Nichols, who was a satanic pedophile. They were abusing them and putting them through what is called MK Ultra mind control abuse, to create altars to make the kids, put them in a state of mind where they could then interact with the trip chair to open up portals and gateways and time and space to go different places.
Let's just
In
define that
particular,
word alter because I know that some people hear it, and it's like,
So an alter is an alternate personality, a split personality.
So you
So,
could say a lot of the schizophrenic people who are diagnosed as schizophrenic, it's just that they have two or more parallel alters in
well,
information.
that could be, it could be that. It
That's from
literally
my
could be,
observation and work. I've seen that a lot.
right. Other of them could be literally speaking with outside entities. Others of them um, are having a combination of bilocation where they're like might be existing in two realities or two different places at once. So there's a whole bunch of things, but yes, some people who are diagnosed as schizophrenic, very likely it's because they have it's they generally call it dissociative identity disorder, DID. Okay. And it's where it's depicted in the movies, like the Marvel movies with the Winter Soldier, where they'll start like speaking at him in Russian code words, Ruskaya, Soldat, whatever. And then he's like, no, no. And then like they hit, Prima 5. And like at the end of this activation code, there's a switch. It's literally that
Let's go into
it,
that briefly because I've worked, I can't talk too much, but as I said, I've worked with children and I have worked with some of those children who've been through some of those programs. So shipped off to Switzerland for 6 weeks.
hmm,
To learn Swiss.
right.
Yeah, not. And you could see that you have this charming person you'd interacted with normally, and then there was the knowledge, the existence, you could sense this other side. That's the conditioning. This is this very strange conditioning, which is happening a lot on the planet to a small
Oh,
slice
it's a lot.
of people. Yeah.
Because humans are a very valuable commodity. What's the biggest, cost of doing anything? It's in labor. And so, people have said before, or critics or skeptics have said, oh, gee, there's no way there could be these secret space programs. It would cost so much money. Well, not if you enslave people and you make them do it for free. Then actually a lot of this stuff becomes much more affordable.
So we're getting to that point of the using the child in the
Ah,
chair.
yes. Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. Okay. So with the children, because the children have the psychic abilities and gifts that adults don't have, they would utilize the children in the chair to open up portals in time and space. And part of how they would activate the children is that they would create alters or split personalities in the children that were very proficient at doing certain things. Okay, so they might create an alter in a child to make that child very good at sitting in the chair and opening up a portal in time and space. They might create another alter in that child who would have perfect memory and could sit in on a meeting with adults and they wouldn't pay the kid any mind. But then you could talk to the kid later on and that kid would remember every single everything. Okay. It could diagram out everything, all that. Okay. So that would be like a recorder split person alter or a sex slave alter, because unfortunately we're dealing with a lot of satanic pedophiles here. And when you're talking about the WHO, these are people who are dealing with negative ETs and demonic entities. And the negative ETs and the demonic entities, to certain extents, they can interact with each other. So it's not like, there's some split where there's ETs over here and angels and demons over here. No, we're all in one big world together, guys, gals. And so they were they were finding that they were making progress in this. Um, my friend Arkeem Ra, uh, who is one of our presenters,
And he's really
he
young,
was,
isn't he? Can you remember how old was he when he found this out? I know he was like 23 or something when he discovered what was going on.
yeah, it was only like 8 years ago, not even, that he began to understand what was happening, begin to get memories back, begin to have what we call recalls, have other people reach out to him and say, do you remember what happened? Part of it was probably sparked by him seeing like a documentary on the Montauk Project or the Montauk Chronicles. And then that sparked it off. I believe that's what it was for Arkeem. And I can get him on, we can get him on your show sometime and let him explain, you know. Um, but uh Montauk 1.0 was basically, and this is what Arkim and some others, they break it into like Montauk
Let's just explain.
1.0.
Remember, guys, the Long Island, we had the base, and then
Yeah.
Montauk is just a little bit further along the promontory, and
So yeah.
it looks
So
very
basically what happened was Brookhaven National Labs, they eventually moved their experimentation from Brookhaven National Labs, okay, and they moved it over to the east end of Long Island, New York here to this Camp Heroes section, which was at that point a supposedly abandoned US Army base from World War II. And then this is where you got that infamous SAGE radar, okay? So people talk about the Montauk SAGE radar, this thing. Okay, this is right there at Camp Hero Army Base. And part of it is they were using electronics and frequency and sound to beam this energy at people and make them alter out, make them violent, knock them out, all sorts of stuff, mind control techniques. And then a lot of this is what's pioneered into the 5G and all this Wi-Fi technologies that we have today.
So what I want to talk about with that, because that's in all those Preston Nichols and Peter Moon books. In fact, it's very cursorily touched on, but the government who was running these projects, that project at Montauk, were using their own human beings as the experimentees. So they'd have a whole load of young men having a great time playing pool, drinking beer, and the frequency would be tapped into that room, and they were observing what happens next. So they were using us human beings. This is human beings using human beings as guinea pigs experiments. And now we get to that link between the human and the they, because I would argue that those military generals in charge were not really human.
Well, okay, so you had human generals, or you had humans locally kind of on the scene in charge. Okay, so Preston Nichols was an abuser handler who also messed with a lot of this electronic equipment to interact with the trip chair and the kids. And he also molested the children with him and his dog, literally. Okay, or had the kids. I won't get it. So but he's horrible, and this is left out of the books. Like they really whitewashed his role
They
in
put like
this.
a sentence in, don't they? It's like, oh, what
Yeah,
did you say?
right, right. And then you also had Al Bielek of the Montauk Project, who was another one of the handlers, and also more on like kind of the scientific advisory side of things. And then you had Jack Pruitt, who was kind of like the CIA handler, who there's like no photos of the guy, from what I can tell, but he's depicted in the Montauk Chronicles movie.
No, because I
That
talk
was,
about with this show activating human potential and very much the love of the human being, which has been so denigrated because there have been people who perhaps were human at some point, but so invaded, so altered, so split, and so invaded by fourth dimensional entities, the demonic possession, this sort of parallel use of the human body, that we can't really call those human beings anymore. And this, I think it's important because we keep tarring the general beautiful human population with a brush just because they kind of look the same. But what's on the inside is utterly different, utterly different. And I like to make that point wherever I can, because a child, for example, will know, there's that famous picture of some movie, I can't remember what it is now, but it was a famous movie star, and it was Ellen, of course, Ellen. And this little 3-year-old is supposed to go and say hello to Ellen, and she gets within about 3 foot of her, and it's like, oh, I can't go near that entity. So children know, they feel, and therefore it's even, of course, more horrendous that children were used in these projects because they could feel it even more intensively, even more pure and innocent with less barriers. But it's important we don't tar all the humans and with the same brush. I just love to
oh
make
yeah,
that visual point because we got to
absolutely.
get that discernment within our minds.
Yeah, of course, of course. You've got good and bad ETs, good and bad humans. And then, there's a lot of question here as to what were the motivations, because there were definitely ETs seen at these bases, just like Dulce underground military base. You also had that here at Montauk. People recall seeing the tall whites or Nordic looking ETs. And it's kind of debatable their role. What it seems like, from what I can tell, is that you got ETs on the positive who want to see humanity learn how to make the first steps in time travel and anti-gravity and clean, endless energy, and they want to see us achieve our Star Trek future. Then you've got negative ETs who want to give the darker military Illuminati elements in our governments the keys to very terrible technologies to enslave humanity. Okay, so you kind of had like both factions interacting with our militaries all the time for their own reasons. Just
And
like you've got people
many levels in between as well. Many
many,
shades are in between too. Mm.
exactly, exactly. And then there are people who maybe it's they want to see humanity empowered so that we can throw off any ET invasion of Earth, or and we've already been invaded, guys. We're currently invaded, but to free ourselves. And then yeah, the other people want to see humanity use all these terrible technologies to put us on a negative transhumanism Illuminati timeline.
So
and
let's
and
just hone
basically
in then on this frequency manipulation that all Nichols and Bielik were doing in Montauk and playing around on these young men and the children and doing horrendous stuff with.
and girls, they're also Montauk girls.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay, they're true, and they were that trained for the honeypots as well, weren't they? But it was just, I know it was mostly men there, but so that's this massive negative
Actually,
manipulation.
real quick, let me interrupt. That's a whitewashing that it was mostly men from Preston Nichols. I know Christy Campbell was there, Chastity Campbell was there. Many gals were there, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
keep going,
okay,
please.
okay, cool. Yeah. Um, and so frequency was being used, and then those lessons were being put into pop music, all the 60s, all the big
Oh
bands
yeah.
ever heard of, Ballon, had that information put into the music, which we think is great, and people go and listen to it, and I cannot at all. I am a musician, that's probably why, but the point is, there is some technology there in frequency manipulation that we're not understanding as a human population. It's immensely powerful. Otherwise, why would they make us?
Yeah, it's all about frequency.
How do we change it? How do we use frequency? Because that's what gets me excited. And it's
Yeah.
little known to shift it the other way to empower us, to bring us back into our the full set of human tools. Now I know that's another whole topic, but I want to have that conversation because I know
Well,
you'll have a lot of information on
it's oh yeah. Well, it's related. I mean, the way they apparently the Montauk trip chair. Think about like a high tech looking dentist chair surrounded by like speakers and all sorts of equipment, and they would beam sound and frequency and music at people and energetically hit them or shock them as part of that. So it's absolutely all about that. Because it's all about you know consciousness is frequency and energy and thought patterns. And then all it is these higher technologies or spiritual technologies, they're harnessing that. Whereas the military is trying to weaponize it and hit us with these more harmful frequencies, all the higher beings are using that to heal. And then that's where you get the holographic medbed technology from the Pleiadians, for
Well, I
example.
would like to really interject because we keep on going med beds and the EE systems, and I heal my entire body with my consciousness, with connecting to creator and other people. And I haven't, okay, I make this joke. I use probably half a paracetamol or one a year or one every 2 years. That's it. There's no medication. And I'm not the only person on the planet like that, right? There's a lot
Oh
of,
no, no.
yeah.
Yeah,
So this
yeah, we
higher
keep ourselves
technology
looking
is
younger.
in the consciousness and the spirit first. I really want to kind of get that in there. And then, yes, okay, you can have a med bed and regrow an arm. Yeah, eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, I know. Well, part of it is I personally, my selfish reason for wanting med beds is I have a lot of family and friends who have been jabbed.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that the med bed technology could ultimately help undo a lot of the damaging effects.
Mhm.
and that's why. And that technology is there. According to Audrey Walters, another one of my presenters, what she said is that the real high level medbed technology is Palladian, a certain Palladian civilization. Here, this is Audrey Walters right here, and that was stolen from them, and they're petitioning the Galactic Court to basically take that away from humanity until they decide they want to give permission. And what Audrey Walters is saying is that until we basically have a united one world government, not saying a new world order government, but a cohesive government that the ETs, they don't want to, what she's saying is they don't want to deal with like 50,000 governments on Earth. They want to deal with one united planetary government that they can interact with. And that's how they do it in the ET sphere.
Yeah, but that's the whole Galactic Federation control system thing, isn't it? Because their planets might only be one or two races. The beautiful thing about Earth is we've got this ridiculously crazy, wonderful multinational melting pot with beautiful qualities in each of the nations. And if we subvert into the Star Trek idea of, yes, there's the commander, which is being promoted since the 60s in Star Trek.
well,
We're
let me
going
go
to
to that.
lose a lot of layers. So it's another control, not well
I,
form control.
I, per, I personally believe that we can have a planet where we can each have our individual nations and governances and ethnicities and cultures and variety and beauty, and at the same time have a united Earth government. Those two are not uh, mutually, what do I call it, in denial,
Exclusive.
exclusive, mutually exclusive. It doesn't have to be a new world order, or like we're all under like, IBM or whatever. It could be much more pluralistic while having a unified governance structure to deal with, say, ETs.
That's
So,
nice. Good. I'm glad
and,
you.
and that's because that's the alternative. That's the split. You're going to have the positive, and then you're going to have the inverted negative. Okay. And all of this, you can take time travel and maybe even possibly do good things with it, for the most part. Stay away from time travel, but where you can abuse it.
So let's just touch on that recently because of just one of the shows I did recently. One thing you can easily do with your consciousness is you can go in and pick a moment in time in your past. And then you'll be there with your consciousness, literally in the point of witness, and you can command in a lot more beautiful energy from Creator God Source. And when you put that there, you're equipping whatever was damaged or limited or unhealed with an extra level, and it brings it up. And it's fascinating how fast the effects in the present happen. So usually it's within a day, but sometimes the last time I did it was like 4 hours. Like every single topic that I touched on with the little incremental touches, just 3 points in time, was brought up in the conversation 4 hours later in a very positive light. So yeah, that's using time travel again with our minds in a beautiful, simple way.
Yeah. And then you can do that in the future too, to send strengthening, fortifying thoughts and energy to wherever you feel you might want it or need it. Um, and so off the Montauk project, they did many time travel shenanigans. For example, Arkim Ra talks about a very long-term time travel mission where they basically went back in time to an Italian village where there was this Renaissance inventor, and he would have given us the equivalent of like free energy or time travel because they're very interrelated, or anti-gravity. All three are interrelated. And they literally were in this village with this guy to erase him from history. So if he was going to do a famous experiment that was going to put him on the map, and maybe we knew about it before, they went back in time and they sabotaged his experiment. If there was like a famous writer who's passing through that Italian village and would have met this guy and put him on the map of history, they made sure that meeting never ever happened.
And those are interesting, aren't they? Because the ripples from when you remove something can actually remove yourself in the future. It's far more
Well,
dangerous for the perpetrator than when you add love. to a situation. And that's really important to state as well, isn't it? This, where do we choose to
It,
be? You know.
yeah, well, I got to say, what this does is a lot of people will say, hey, doesn't it create a paradox? What happens if you go back in time and kill your grandfather? That's impossible. Well, what it seems happens is it is possible. What happens is you create a split timeline. There's a split off timeline now. And then the Montauk project or Project Phoenix here explains a lot of the Mandela effects for why things are different. Like, I remember in a Bible, for example, it used to be the lion shall lay down with the lamb. Well, if you go to the Bible now, it says the wolf shall lay down with the lamb. And that's in print. And I'm like, wait a second. It's one thing to change it on the internet, but in print on my bookshelf, no. So the Mandela effect is very, very much real.
Mm. Again, just to go back to media, think of the man in the high castle, you know, Dick, can't remember his surname.
Philip K. Dick. Well, that was real. That's an alternate. That is a real alternate timeline. Other people have seen that timeline. People like James Rink, I believe, and Arkeem have seen that timeline.
And there's a
They've
lot of
also
what we're
seen.
talking about in that series. You know, they actually, you can see the portals opening. You don't necessarily see the chair, but you see a lot of this tech is presented in that. Oh yes, it's just a story.
No, no, no. Philip K. Dick was very much tuned in to parallel timelines and universes, and his stuff was real, for very much so. I mean, the whole replicant thing and the androids, yeah. But that, yeah, that it's people like Arkeem Ra that went through this. I mean, I believe that this is why Tartaria has been wiped from our history books. I believe that a lot of the time travel was used also to wipe Tartaria out.
It's actually surprisingly easy to wipe out a story that is just 50 years ago. If I go back to that little tiny thing I said about my uncle who saw a UFO and then he committed suicide, and that was just quietened in the story of the family. And that's just a
Yeah,
few years, you know, it's just a few decades ago. There are things that we are impressed upon, we do not discuss. And just in a few years' time, if we don't have another scandemic, people will pretend that that never happened. I know because we're taught to be this weird sort of tolerant, this sense of what love and understanding should be is also skewed. So that's why we're getting all this beautiful rainbow love. Oh, let's go and let people do what they want with our children in public, with this tolerance, tolerance, tolerance.
yeah. Well,
Again,
that's a
using
false
this,
light.
it's a false
That's a
light, it's a
it's what's
false
called a false
narrative.
light agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's so for people it's this every day, every moment, everything they see, every sign semiotic coming towards them, they have to test. And so
of
the
course.
more we can understand what's happening with frequency and what we have to develop as tools. So let's just talk about you with that. So you've got these friends, there's some kind of link, maybe in a parallel reality, and obviously you've got this, let's call it exaggerated discernment from the norm. It's actually a perfectly wonderful discernment level, okay, but for the norm, it's an exaggerated. How do you think you stepped out of line and allowed yourself to be that? Because this is an important place in our history of switching from I'm in the hive, I just agree. Oh no, wait, no, what? What's going on? And we need to
It's
understand
it's
that moment.
it's it's like there's a herd of bison and there's a forest fire or whatever, a brush fire down the wind. And maybe most of the bison are content drinking at the water hole and chewing the grass. And some of us bison, you sniff at the smoke on the wind. And it's is it you get each and every one of us gets to decide when we smell smoke or see or hear something funny if we're going to um try to use that as a wake-up call. Like 9/11 was a wake-up call. Okay. Knowing that two airplanes cannot bring down three skyscrapers at free fall. World Trade Center 7 never hit by a building, collapses at free fall. No, that takes weeks to plan and wire up a building to demolition at free fall. That's obviously pre-planned. Okay. Now, my family, my brothers, who hated me for bringing this up, it's an inside job. Oh, I'm a kooky conspiracy theorist with a tinfoil hat. Deep down, I knew something in me knew deep down back then that if I lost this ideological fight, with my spiritual fight with my family at that time, there would be horrible, grave consequences later down the road. So when the scamdemic kicked in and they were basically mandating people to roll up their sleeves, I already knew because they failed that first test of discernment. That's what this is really called, discernment, that they were going to fail the next test. And that's their free will to do. Okay. And so it really comes down to free will discernment and deciding for yourself if you want to take the red pill or the blue pill. And not everyone's going to take the red pill and it's okay. I'm one of those people where I'll let you take the blue pill and know that you might suffer horrible consequences and you're going to have to come back around and do it over again. And that's life.
Now, you introduce yourself as a starseed as part of your introduction. So that,
yeah.
In the way we perceive that, that is, let's say, a soul with more stability. Probably more of your soul is actually in your body, perhaps a clearer version, less snipping up of spiritual parts, much more homogeneous, therefore a kind of strength, I would suggest,
Well,
to put it into.
I'd say those might be characteristics. That's not of a starseed. The way I define it is that kind of more like the Dolores Cannon tradition, and others of like we live so many lives and go through this reincarnation cycle. Many of us have many lives on other planets and other realms, and then of those, many people or spiritual beings answered a call from God's source to come here to Earth to assist in this time and age in the third density, to assist Earth and humanity as together to elevate from third density consciousness rapidly through fourth and into fifth density consciousness. And this is what's commonly known as the ascension. And so
I say
those of us who
absolutely that those two fit together. I was just trying to define the quality of the energy
yeah
of the person, because you talked about your family, and that's, dear to your heart, and we all have these experiences with our families, most of us. And we go back to the Montauk project with the young men playing pool in the room with the frequencies bombarding them for experimentation for those military generals who are probably entity possessed.
mm.
So that's frequency manipulation on the human being. Frequency manipulation through currently all of our tech that we use and the movies we watch and the music we listen to. So so we've got these stable spirits, you and I, and people like us. So we are able to defend ourselves a little more against it because we know what feels good. And we know if we sing, if we do this, if we do that, we can bring ourselves back into a clearer space. So we have more information.
And then we get targeted more. And so it's kind of like this, it's a spiritual warfare thing. Because like, okay, great. Now then we're starseed, so we've got more tools to handle, this world. And then the other side targets us more, right?
Yes. Smash.
Right. So it's this constant one-upmanship. What's happening now is that the other side, I think, is losing control. Their nefarious plans are not yielding the results that they thought that they were going to get. They're not
And we're
killing off
spreading the
enough people.
information. We're spreading the information to
That's
those
right.
who didn't have that frequency resilience. We had the
And we're a big
frequency
part why.
resilience, and it's starting to get through. It's like, what? That's not just a movie? Oh, that's why you don't want me to list that piece of music? They're demonic. What? Yeah.
Yes. And what we're doing is this brings us to the full disclosure movement, is we're putting out as broad a call to the masses as possible, as reputable and cogent and reliable testimonies as we can give. And then knowing that 7 out of 10 aren't going to listen to us, but of the 3 out of 10 who will, okay, of them, some of them are going to trickle over to our side. And so instead of people saying, well, how are we going to go from the masses being clueless for the most part about, all this, the secret access programs and the ET contact, to all of a sudden knowing, it's a stepwise process. It's not overnight. And I think a lot of people despair because they don't see a way to jump from here to here. And I'm trying to say, hey, if we work together, apply some discipline, pool our resources, instead of jumping from here to here, we can climb up, climb up, climb up. And then as we accelerate, we'll climb faster.
Yeah, nice.
That's
And
how
it
movements work.
spreads in these little, like today, it was horrible, overcast, heavy. I know what they, God knows what they put in the sky last night. And it was difficult for me today. And I have a whole array of tools that I can use. And in the end, I had to use some very specific overtones. That's when you get these harmonic frequencies, and you can feel it through your entire body. You're conditioning not only your body, but the space around you, your auric field and beyond. So I had to do that to the whole house and my body, and then I felt better and the sky changed. So, but I had to know that stuff. I had to work it out, remember it, practice it, prove it to myself, find the evidence to back it up. And now, of course, I teach it. But this is the little steps, isn't it? It's not just have really nice organic food and drink really good water. It's okay, and now you can use your body to do this and your mind to do this. And we're giving the tools and the awareness.
Yeah, it's like the growing of the food and paying your bills. That's getting your shit together, if I will, if I may, at the third density basis, right? And then now you're talking about exploring that fourth density and fifth density consciousness and spirituality that is above that ho hum nitty gritty. And when we talk about bringing people or elevating their understanding or their consciousness, a lot of that has to do with showing them, peeling away that layer between that hard ceiling that they hit for the third density. Okay, hey, we die, and then who knows what happens? Scientists say we're just worm food, or maybe we can upload ourselves into a computer. Stupid stuff like that. Fourth density and fifth density understanding is like we're spirits, spiritual beings. We have souls. We go beyond. We might come back here. We might go somewhere else. We exist beyond time and space. And and that's an understanding that we may bring because as star seeds, maybe we've lived more incarnations in more different places. We're more experienced and seasoned travelers. And then we answered a call to come here to Earth to incarnate here and then to assist as being incarnated beings here. And that's how you don't violate the prime directive. Instead of having spaceships land coming in from the sky and then having the native population worship the sky beings.
They
That's
tried that,
mentioned.
didn't work so
I've
well.
already tried that, right? What you do is you incarnate some of your own people as humans on Earth, and then you work from the inside. And that's basically that's how I define the star seeds for the most part.
And I think there's another topic that we're only just starting to look at with the star seeds because of the work. When I talk a lot to the earth, she likes to be called Amma when I have chats with her. I have another friend who talks to the earth and she's like a fierce dragon, but then that friend of mine is quite like a fierce dragon anyway, so you can see why she would get that resonance. However, this thing of what is a planet, planetary consciousness, because an ant is pretty important as a being, just like we are, but we're a million times bigger than an ant.
Right,
So
right.
maybe a planet, we could be friends. You and I might have
Oh, we
met
can.
Amma
Audrey
the
Walters
Earth
speaks to
before,
this.
somewhere. Planet
Audrey Walters
beings.
speaks this. One of the greatest honors for a soul is to become a planet and to bear life. The second greatest honors is to be a star, is to provide the energy that then gives life to the planets. And those are known as celestial beings. That's when your soul reaches that capacity that you could be given that type of honor to spiritually inhabit a planet. That's one of the greatest spiritual honors in this universe, apparently.
Yeah, I know her from James's shows. She's spoken a couple of times there, hasn't she? That's back a couple of years now. I have to go and see what she's up to now. That's nice. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Audrey Walters does a YouTube channel called Star Netlink, and she has a series of videos known as Space School. And she's on like her 27th or 30th episode by now, and they're amazing.
I'll go check that out. Do you want to tie anything up? We brought quite a big arc. This idea of the child in the chair is still, maybe we can just finish that into something.
Yeah. So these children, they survived the programs. They're now here in the 3D world, living to tell the tale. Please, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Brian Tseng, the Solar Bee. My last name is spelled Tseng. I'm a friend of Isabel's there. Maybe you can find me through there. Send me a message. Let me know how you'd like to participate with the full disclosure movement, and help me organize all these survivors, bringing forth their testimonies, get them to the next year's conference, get them onto shows like yours, Isabel, and to spread the word. And then we can also form support networks. There are people who own businesses and they need good employees. And I'll give you an example. We have a contact who has like two ranches, one in Montana and one in Arkansas, where he does glamping resorts, and he's short on people. Well, maybe we've got targeted individuals out there who they want to get out of wherever they are. They're being, gang stalked, and they'd love to have a situation where they could live in a glamping resort and help with the tourists. And then maybe they could do CE5 meditations and become an attraction and then supplement their income. And now you've got these win-win situations while they then go on to be on shows like ours and spread the word and go to our conferences. And now we've got a building movement that's self-sustaining because we're supporting each other at the third density level and then up at the fourth and fifth density, and we're moving the meter. That's
I really love
kind
that.
of the state of the movement now.
I mean, just the purity of that message that you just said, that this is this beautiful, heart open human being. And yeah, maybe a little bit more than a human, who cares? Humans are amazing when they're in their heart. And this link of the connectivity that we can have through trust and shared resonance, this is the thing we're building. This is the basis of our new earth, whatever we're moving into. Thank you so much. Really been fun talking to you. I really, really enjoyed it. Do you want to say we've got 1.5 minutes left? We can always dial back in, but is there anything you'd love to say?
I love being on your show today. Thank you very much. I'd love to be back. And also, any of the presenters on my conference website, if you would say, "Hey, Brian, I'd love to interview, let's say, Laura Eisenhower. You haven't gotten to interview Laura yet. I'd love to help wrangle Laura and get her onto your show."
Yet. Laura is a long-time friend, and I must say, a few years ago, when she used to talk about Carlton with like 60 words to a dozen, it was like, and I sent her a long message because, of course, I work as a voice coach, and I just said, "Look, I love you so much. I want you to speak slower. I'm going to give you free coaching. If you will take me, please." No, she never took the free coaching, but she did slow down.
Yeah, I can
we
see
need
that.
to hear your message. Slow. So yeah,
Right.
one day I will interview Laura, and that will be crazy, sparky.
Yeah,
Tell her
yeah, I'm
I
sure.
want to
And
talk
she would, yeah, she is amazing, and her testimony is very important, not just for regarding her great grandfather Dwight Eisenhower's presidential administration, but also her own testimony.
Well, her mind is so cosmic, isn't it? This is the
Yeah,
thing, and that's
yeah.
why it's hard for her to slow down, because it's like,
She got a lot of it. Exactly, exactly. She gave a great 2-hour presentation at my conference.
Absolutely love what you said. Thank you so much for being here. I really hope we can arrange another chat. I mean,
Oh yeah,
so many avenues we could go to. But for me, it's always about how do we activate ourselves? And that's, of course, what you're doing in that big area. I love emotional intelligence and therefore spiritual intelligence. And if I can find a way to show it to people where they don't actually have to buy it, the old system was you go and buy this course. And yes, of course, I need an income, but these shows are actually just, they're given out there to inspire and help. And then, okay, they can come and employ you or me to do something or come to your disclosure conference. But we need to bring this information out there as much as possible. So thank you so much for doing that, rocking the boat so well.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. We're definitely rocking the boat. People have said that when we did our conference, there were definitely a couple of spooks were there, and there were definitely people in the resort who might have been sent to interfere and electronically target and harass some of our people. Surprise, surprise. But overall, the feedback, not only from the attendees, the vendors, and the presenters, has been amazing. But apparently, through communicating via our friends like Audrey Walters and Christopher Jacobs and Joanna Michaels, our positive, benevolent ET friends were very happy with our event as well.
Mm.
Not only were they there to monitor our proceeding, you know, kind of just be there to maybe be a guardian role as well and kind of help block out interference. Apparently, according to Audrey, um, they use this as an opportunity because they had their ships in the same physical spaces above the St. Pete Beach area. They use that as an opportunity themselves to meet and engage in trade and political negotiation,
Mm.
which is really amazing.
Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, I'm very much tuned into Gosha, her cosmic agency stuff.
Yes. Yep.
And that's interesting. I like it when they get down to the nitty gritty of, coming down sometimes and visiting and buying a chocolate and, you
Right.
know.
Right. Well, it's called a lot of people refer to these angels not aware theory, whereas like let's say it's a human looking ET or they can disguise themselves and they'll come and get a chocolate bar right next to you in the liquor store.
Or they're
And
homeless. I've met a lot of those guys who were, the homeless guy in the bus. And don't you think you should get out here in the love parade in
yeah,
the? It's like, yes, okay. Because yeah, we'll have to do an episode on that. Let's do an episode on that. I think that'd be fun. The
yeah,
hidden.
because if you generally if you pretend you don't know that they're other, they'll hang out and talk with you. But once you start saying, "Are you different? You're not from around here," all of a sudden they got to go. They disappear,
Yeah,
and that's partly because they're under certain rules where they can hang out as long as they pass as a local. But once their cover is blown, they got to go.
we should call that rules of engagement. That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Yes, they have rules of
Okay.
engagement.
Yeah.
Because according to Audrey, there have been positive ETs who have come here to try to really assist humanity and break us out of what we're in, but overstepping whatever boundaries, and they've since been banned from Earth until Earth is freed. So
Mm.
like thousands of years, there's some ET races that are banned from Earth, literally for thousands of years, and there's to this day, and so they take it very seriously not to violate certain of these treaties. Now, of course, that's to the ET races who respect such treaties. Not all of them do.
Well, maybe their names weren't included in the list so they can get around. I like lateral thinking personally. There's generally a way through. That's a nice way to end it, isn't it? Because we
Well,
talk
it
about
is
a lot of
generally
dark things, but also solutions.
what I'd say is there's universal laws, and then I guess karma will decide how well we conduct ourselves in accordance with those universal laws.
And we are creative beings.
Yes, yes, and that's our choice. That as our free will choice as creators, we can generate the dharma, good influences, or the karma, not so nice or fun stuff.
So, on that beautiful note, I wish you an amazing day. You're just at the start of it. And
Yeah,
I've got the sun now. I'm very happy. We got rid of
yeah.
the nasty layer of cloud. It's gone. I wish you a beautiful day in Nevada and look forward to talking to you again soon, Brian. It would be really a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isabel.
Yeah.
God bless.
Okay. See you.